things you could be doing with your time. So the fact that you chose to spend a couple of hours with us tonight is really very appreciated. I also want to thank the National Public Housing Museum and Columbia College for making this night possible. My great-grandmother, Ida B. Wells, was a celebrated journalist, a civil rights activist, suffragist, community organizer, and one of the founders of the NAACP, as you already probably know. She was born a slave on July 16, 1862 in Holly Springs, Mississippi. And she spent a good portion of her life using the power of the pen to impact social change. She lived during a very dangerous, violent times. During her lifetime, the lawlessness of lynching was running rampant through our country. Most of it was concentrated in the South. Not all of it, some of it. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, over 10,000 African Americans were dragged out of jails, out of their homes, or they were literally hunted down in fields or forests, only to be tortured, burned, shot, and murdered at the hands of mobs. There were no trials or even formal charges of a crime. This is what my great-grandmother was living through. For thousands of African Americans, the mere suggestion or accusation of a crime was enough to potentially be murdered. And that was not only in the 1800s, it happened all the way up until, we can think of Emmett Till, I'm sure some of your lifetimes. So this is not really ancient history. Although she started as a school teacher, the course of my great-grandmother's life was permanently changed in 1892 when three of her close friends, Thomas Moss, William Stewart, and Calvin McDowell, proud owners of a grocery store and upstanding citizens of the community, were murdered because they were accused of a crime they did not commit. Her knowledge of their innocence propelled her to investigate other lynchings that had taken place. Then she used her writing skills to expose the truth of what was actually occurring in this community, in our country, the United States of America. The truth was that innocent people were being killed in order to control an entire group of people, former slaves. Domestic terrorism, what was really going on. And that is what she wrote about. She wrote about the atrocities in numerous newspapers and then branched out to writing pamphlets, which some of you might have read. She wrote the Red Record. She wrote Southern Horrors, Lynch Law in All Its Phases in 1892. She wrote Lynch Law in Georgia. After she was exiled from the South, because of her writing, she spoke to people all over the northern part of this country, and then she actually had the opportunity to speak in the United Kingdom. And then she went back to England in 1894 to speak even more to the British about what was going on in this country. She produced a pamphlet called The Reason Why the Colored American is Not in the World's Columbian Exposition, which is the longest title ever in the history of the world. And she distributed at the World's Fair here in Chicago in 1893. My great-grandmother used her words as a weapon. She had nothing else on her side. She lived during a time where there was separate and unequal Jim Crow laws against former slaves, and she was a woman who did not have the right to vote. She had no economic power, so words were the only thing she had to fight with. And she used them with such skill and focus that she was propelled into a leadership role and is now, today, considered a historic figure. During her time, she wasn't considered that. She was considered a whole lot of other things, right? But not a heroic person. She was considered more like a troublemaker. Tomorrow, March 25th, is the 79th anniversary of her death. That's the significance of having this today, not just because it's Women's History Month, but it also happened to be very close to the day that she died. She died in 1931 at the age of 68. I am inspired by her, and not just because I'm a descendant of hers. I'm inspired by her from the perspective of being a woman who defied social expectations. I'm inspired because she fought for what she believed was just and what was right. And she was willing to make sacrifices in order to speak out against a system that was designed to subjugate and silence an entire group of people. She used words as a tool. Words. Words on a written piece of paper. That's all she had to work with. And as a fellow writer, I find that inspiring. The power of the word. My great-grandmother, Ida B. Wells, left a strong legacy. A legacy of powerful journalism. A legacy of speaking out and fighting for justice. She had a legacy of social work and in the name of creating equal opportunity for all. And in addition to her public work, she also left a strong legacy of family. That's why I'm here. I'm not the only family member who is here in attendance. All of us with these little white flowers are family members. Ida B. Wells and her husband, Ferdinand Barnett, had 4 children. And those 4 children had a total of 7 children, so there were 7 grandchildren of Ida B. Wells total. And then there were a total of 20 great-grandchildren. Today there are 18 great-grandchildren still living. So those of us who are family members, you can wave your hand and let people know who you are. All men. I'm the only fabulous woman in the group. My father and my uncle, who are grandchildren of Ida, are sitting right there in the second row, and then the other great-grandchildren are kind of trying to hide back there behind the post. But they're here. The legacy of Ida B. Wells fighting for justice lives on today, which is what this program is about. And I think the impact that she made on the world is felt by, we are so happy to say, the younger generation. It's being passed on. And this evening we have 2 young ladies who are going to read winning essays about how the work that Ida B. Wells did impacts their lives today in 2010. We have 2 students, Jada Jones and Tashura Lee, who are 8th graders at the Learn Charter School, Romano Butler campus on the west side of Chicago. And these phenomenal, talented, fabulous young women attend a school whose mission is to give students the academic foundation and aspiration to attend college. This year, 100% of the graduates, 100%. Let me say that one more time. 100% of the graduates have been accepted and will be attending college prep schools. I'd like to acknowledge the teachers, the parents, and the administrators from the school. Please stand up, wave your hand, wherever you all are great. We are so inspired by you. We can tell that you are fantastic because we see the product of the work that you are doing. Keith and I went to visit the school. We met these young ladies the other day, and we were just floored at how fabulous they are. So we want to share them with you. So I would like to ask Jada Jones to read her essay. Jada Jones is going to be attending Francis Parker High School in a few months.